Good afternoon all. A warm welcome to this afternoon's conference on business events. My name is Mike Metcalf. I'm the current chair of the Business Events Development Group and have been involved as a hotelier in the region for almost 30 years. We have some excellent speakers lined up for this afternoon, and I'll be guiding you through the afternoon's topics and introducing you to our speakers. Let's explore some of the content and the purpose of this afternoon's event. Today's conference is called The Pathway Forward, and will amplify the importance and the opportunity that business events can play in our economic recovery as activity begins to open up. Our conference is positive about the future of business events, and our purpose today is to promote a wider appreciation and an understanding of the broader impact business events can have. We argue that business events cuts across all economic sectors and has far-reaching benefit beyond tourism. We want also to give confidence to all those businesses who depend on or who benefit from business events. The business events market has been paralysed by the disruption of COVID, and those conferences and association meetings planned in 2020 didn't take place, and those for 2021 have postponed or cancelled. Pipeline can be a long process in event planning of 2 to 3 years, which means that recovery will be about future years. We need to be positive, we need to stay in touch with the market behaviour, and we need to plan and be proactive. The current opportunity is already substantial. It should be noted that 60% of the world's association conference events are for below 250 delegates. We would strongly support the evolution of a purpose-built conference facility, and the development prospect of the eSports arena and the Eden project would clearly place us in a very strong position and would magnify our opportunity for business events with larger numbers of delegates. The city and the region have in recent times already grown an impressive new bed stock within its hotel sector. The pandemic has changed much, and conference formats will also inevitably change too, and are likely to include elements of virtual and hybrid events. We, like ICA, the International Congress and Convention Association, believe very strongly that there remains a case for face-to-face events in the future once confidence is restored. We will need to recognise and adapt to the changing environment, and our conference today will explore the questions of virtual and digital in the accelerated transformation of business events. Let me introduce our Pathfinders programme. Pre-pandemic, our Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau has actively engaged in the hugely successful Project Legend campaign, led by Visit Scotland's business events, over a 24-month period, which focused on Scotland's knowledge wealth and reputation for innovation. Knowledge wealth and reputation for innovation are key strengths in our city and our region, and through our Convention Bureau, we have established already a Pathfinders programme, and with the Business Events Development Group have worked with tremendous support from our leading academic and research institutes, helping to showcase the region's growing reputation for innovation and leading research. We will hear from some of our Pathfinders shortly in our first session this afternoon. The Business Events Development Group was formed to help launch and develop the Pathfinders programme, playing to our strengths and taking a regional approach across Dundee, Angus, Fife and Perthshire. In May 2019, the Pathfinders programme was launched in an event on Slesher Gardens. The Pathfinders programme reinvented the former Ambassadors programme and became proactive in seeking new Pathfinders, collaborating with great minds from our institutions from across the region in bringing national and international academic and professional association conferences to Dundee City and region. Celebrating 19 years, the now Pathfinders programme has secured over 236 conferences. The programme is a platform for global collaboration, for research advancement and industry innovation. We call this the legacy impact. We want to inspire, encourage and to recruit more Pathfinders from our local research academics and industrialists. Pathfinders is also, of course, open to industry too, and links strongly across the 5 key sectors set out in the recent Invest in Dundee conference in January. The themes strongly expressed at that event and the need for collaboration, partnership, togetherness, leading to innovation and progress are themes that are echoed loudly in today's event. Today we'll take a look at the legacy of business events and the beyond tourism effect. We'll also take a look at the current international outlook for recovery of the business events market We want to share with you global intelligence to articulate the Scottish position from Visit Scotland's business events and to explain our local plan from our own Convention Bureau. We will hear contributions on how digital and virtual will continue to help transform the future conferencing. After our speaker sessions, we will engage you, our audience, in a question and answer session before we wrap up around 5 p.m. You can submit questions throughout the conference, which our moderator will streamline into questions for our panel for that later event. You'll also be able to enter questions live, which I hope you'll join us at this Q&A session at the end of our conference today. Let's make a start with our first conference section, which we have called Driving the Success of Tomorrow, the importance of business events to our Pathfinders. I have great pleasure in introducing you to our Pathfinders and our first speakers for today. Sir Michael Ferguson, University of Dundee, Charles Malone, Abertay University, Colin Campbell, James Hutton Institute, and Frank Muller, University of St Andrews.
I'm Mike Ferguson from the University of Dundee, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Tay Cities deal and a particular component of that called Growing the Tay Cities Region Biomedical Cluster. And what we're going to try and do is to really make a step change in innovation-led growth through forming new companies and creating new job opportunities in the region to grow the Tay Cities region prosperity. So what a region like ours needs in order to really achieve this kind of strong growth is it needs excellence and scale in its biomedical research base. And we really have that in this region. In Dundee University alone, we have over £70 million worth of research grant investment each year into the university. So we have the very substrate, the essence of the scale and excellence of research that we need. The second thing we need is the ability to convert early innovation into investable assets. And actually, we're very, very good at this. For example, again, the University of Dundee has a drug discovery unit, which is like a pharmaceutical company within the university that can convert early biological discoveries into prototypic medicines. And we need the credibility and reputation to attract venture capital interest and investment. And we have that as well. We have extremely good relationships with all of the major life sciences venture capital agencies in the UK and beyond. So we have all of the raw materials, but the fourth thing that we need, which we don't currently have, is we need appropriate physical infrastructure and business development environment to anchor company formation and growth close to the founding expertise and intellectual property. And this is the very thing, the fourth box, that the Tay Cities deal is going to deliver for us. So just to give you some examples of to convince you that we can do this. For example, in 2012, we spun out a company from University of Dundee in this particular case called Exscientia, based on my friend Andrew Hopkins's brilliance. And that so far has secured over £80 million worth of investment. Now, it still has a foothold in Dundee, about 20 staff in Dundee, but it's about 100 employees overall in various different places, mostly in Oxford. And in the future, I would like it when we spin out a company like Exscientia that the majority of the employment stays in the region. Another example is Amphista Therapeutics. This is a rather a very exciting story, but a sadder story insofar as that it's pretty recent. We span it out at the very end of 2017 from Alessio Ciuli's work, and it's received very substantive seed and Series A investment. That's the first big tranche of investment, so about £8 million altogether. And it's if you keep on watching the newspapers, you'll see another big dollop of investment coming its way as well. But very sadly, we lost this company from the city that generated it, which in this case was Dundee, just because we didn't have appropriate infrastructure, appropriate laboratory space for which it could move into. And so that's exactly what we're going to stop by having the Tay Cities deal investment. And just to reassure you, there are 14, no less than 14 other companies at various stages of gestation within the university that will form a continuous pipeline of opportunities for us to nurture in the region. So although we lost Amphista, there are more to come. So just to frame this, the COVID pandemic has been a disaster and caused massive disruption for everybody. But I think what it has demonstrated is that there's never been a greater need for a very strong UK life sciences sector. It will enable us to have pandemic preparedness for future pandemics. It'll enable us to tackle things like antimicrobial resistance. That's the failure of antibiotics against regular bugs these days. It'll enable us to tackle non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and that will include developing innovative therapeutics for the aging process, what we call multimorbidities of aging. And also, of course, we constantly need new advanced surgical methodologies and equipment. And this is what the Tay Cities deal is all about developing. So the Tay Cities deal will deliver provision of quality jobs for our school leavers and graduates and postgraduates and retrainees by generating new industries in the region. And it will demonstrate real world impact through the commercialization of the innovation that we generate. So this slightly squiggly line diagram tries to give a flavor of what's going on. Starting from the left-hand side, the University of Dundee and NHS Tayside, and indeed our sister higher education institutes like the University of St Andrews and Abertay University, have this amazing bedrock of discovery biomedical research. We can convert that through to investable intellectual property, with which to attract the inward investment. Now, the two red boxes on this diagram are the bits we don't have at the moment. We need a greater volume of translational capability for the medtech side, and we need then on the very far right-hand side an innovation hub in which those new companies that we form in biopharma, biotech, informatics, and medtech can enter to go through their high growth phase. The high growth phase is when they enter with 5 or 6 employees and come out with 30 to 40 employees, and then they will find their own accommodation on our technology park or Medipark and anchor them in the region. It'll also allow what we call spin-ins, which is some companies, when they see all of the innovation going on in the region, will actually want to come to be close to it, and that's called spinning in. So we anticipate creating a lot of spin-out companies and indeed attracting some spin-in companies. All of them, of course, bringing jobs and prosperity to the region. So the main component of the Tay Cities deal is £20 million towards what we call the Innovation Hub. This is a physical entity. It's purpose-built laboratory and office space to receive these companies in their high growth phase with all the right kind of high-tech facilities. They'll be rented, the space will be rented to these fledgling and growing companies at market rate, and therefore it operates on a totally sustainable business operation. But the key here is that the companies that we create won't have to look around and find somewhere to put themselves. It'll be right on their doorstep, the obvious place to go into their high growth phase. Now, independent economic assessment says that we can expect this part of the Tay Cities deal to create at least 280 high quality biomedical jobs within its first 10 years of operation. It will open in 2023, and 800 jobs over 30 years. Very importantly, we're working very closely with Dundee and Angus College, for example, to make sure that the training and retraining opportunities in the region are absolutely fit for purpose, so that our youngsters in particular can get HNC, HND and degree qualifications, which will put them in pole position to get great jobs in these new industries. And finally, as I said, the companies can't run on vapors. They have to generate very large sums of money to employ these people and to pursue their R&D programs, and that will come from inward investment from national and international venture capital. So bringing money from elsewhere in the world into the region to generate and create jobs for our people here in the region. So I think there's a lot to look forward to, and I hope we can convince you in a few years' time that we're on a tremendous trajectory to really create a very burgeoning life sciences biomedical cluster in the Tay Cities region. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi, my name is Charlie Malone. I'm the Head of Division for Accounting, Business and Management within the School of Business, Law and Social Sciences at Aberdeen University. I'm absolutely delighted to be here to make this contribution, and what I think is an extremely important session has been hosted by Dundee and Angus Convention Board. The event itself is really useful in that we're bringing together a number of key stakeholders who are engaged in the consideration and planning of an approach to events in an omni-channel format post-COVID. We always start with these things by looking at some statistics, just to reinforce just how important this session is. I'm sure you get many statistics as you go through the presentation, but I've just pulled out a couple. The first is the Visit Scotland business events, which the report focused on the contribution to the Scottish economy on the basis of people who are attending business events and then staying on, perhaps to engage in some kind of activities around tourism. They found that events account for 47% of associated events within the UK, and conferences making up the remaining 53%. So we're seeing that conferences and other events are making a particular contribution to the business events in 2018-19. The survey indicated that events are key to economic recovery in a post-COVID Scotland. And we look at the historical figures and we see that the events contribute in the region of £6 billion to the Scottish economy, but also it makes a vital contribution to the nation's well-being. Events are more than just the income generators, but they have a knock-on effect on the well-being of the nation. We have to locate this within the context of where we are today, and we are dealing with the tragic human consequences of COVID-19. We know that the economic consequences and the potential impact on tourism are being felt across the sectors of the economy. Key events such as the Tokyo Olympic Games have been cancelled, but we've also saw the emergence of virtual events that get us to explore and see how can we use the technology in a way that allows us to have an enriched approach to events management, planning and execution. We also have to recognise the significant loss of revenue to the economy as events have been cancelled. The European Business School suggested that hybrid events are going to become the norm, incorporating both live and virtual elements. We've all been faced with a situation of digital transformation. If somebody had told me a year ago that we would have to completely digitally transform education at a higher education level, and we would be able to do it as smooth as we have, then I would have doubted that extremely. And what we're seeing now is the same approach to digital transformation is happening within the events industry. And I would suggest it probably predated COVID, but now we've got this opportunity to have hybrid events which allow both physical presence and virtual presence. So we've got to understand the opportunities of traditional hybrid events moving forward if we're going to sustain that economic contribution to Scotland, to our region, Angus, Perth, Tayside, and Scotland beyond that. We're also going to have to understand that how do we involve stakeholders? There's a range of stakeholders that are vital to the successful implementation and execution of events. How do we start to develop frameworks which allow us a better sense of understanding of these different stakeholders and how they can contribute to the success of future events? What are the sector-specific skills we're going to have to identify? I mentioned that in higher education, we went through digital transformation overnight. What we had were groups of academics who maybe didn't have the technological literacy that was required for digital transformation. But how we went through that, through self-help, through supporting each other and developing the skills, if we are going to be moving to a future that's built around hybrid events, then we need to start identifying those skills that will be necessary, as I said, to actually ensure that the performance of these events maximises opportunity going forward. We've got to look at the demand predictions and logistics management. What is going to be the future demand for events? Hopefully, at coming out of COVID, people will kind of be looking to events to try and escape the gloom of the experience they've had so far. But we've also got to think about the operation and planning and the management of these events. And I give the example of Slessor Gardens in Dundee, where we've had brilliant events recently contributing significantly to the economy of the city. But we've also recognised there is an impact when it comes to things like traffic flows around the city. And so we have to look at how events are mapped within and configured within the requirements of the context in which they're operating. I think one of the things we have to look at is inclusivity access. If we are going to be moving to a much more hybrid approach to events and events planning and production and execution. How do we ensure that enough citizens have access and have the ability to engage in events? So we're looking at city-wide, regional-wide, national-wide participation in events. If events are critical to the well-being of society, then it has to be inclusive. The challenge, I guess, for those of us involved in the events is to look at this complexity that's emerging post-COVID. And we have to look beyond economic imperative. It's not just about now, about making profits on an event, but also building sustainable economic performance. How do we ensure that the success of events kicks in and feeds in to the economic well-being of a city? How does it then create money and opportunity for investment in some of the services we need to support people? We're going to have to understand the changing legislation in terms of licensing, the planning at both national and local level, and the importance of understanding planning when it comes to organising events. But we're also going to have to look at things like managing a contingent workforce. More and more, events are just projects. They tend to bring together people who are atypical workers, flexible workers. How do we manage those people and avoid the controversies we've seen with some events, where events are being staffed, particularly in the music sector, have been staffed by volunteers? What is the social responsibility of business when it comes to managing these contingent workers? Technology itself. How do we associate ourselves? How do we understand the technology and the implementation of the technology and the practice and use of that technology? What about people management? How do we look at our people management strategies? Again, when it comes to developing people within our organisations to have necessary skills to move to this new version, this new hybrid version of events. And there's also things like understanding risk management failures and project failures. If we think about just the technology I'm communicating today, how many of us have had the experience of being in an event where the technology has failed and it's caused the event to lack the success it could have otherwise had? I guess my view is what is required is that we need to start to grow the base, the skills base of our populace, in order to make them aware and have the tools necessary to run successful hybrid events business and management. And events continue to be a driver of local and national and regional economic development. How do we create that skills base? How do we engage with local education and training providers across the city in order and across the region in order to develop that skills base necessary for us to lead when it comes to virtual events and when it comes to hybrid events, not follow the trends that are set elsewhere? What about the security of online events, the cyber security implications of moving towards more hybrid operations when it comes to events? Well, I think that's where we come in. University sector, college sector, etc. I think that's where we come in. And I think what we've done at Aberdeen is looked at the future of events, and we've looked at particularly hybrid events and the importance of understanding the digital dimension of events and the digital contribution of events. So we've looked to change our portfolio to reflect that. And so we see that we've introduced for the first time a new BA Honours Business Management with events, and also digital marketing with events. What are the digital tools? What are the skills that our students are going to have to require in order to be successful when it comes to employment within hybrid events situations? But we're also looking at it within the subjects as well. What about events and sustainability that I mentioned before? What about things like legacy management? What about things like inclusivity? Events in digital marketing. Again, as I said before in the digital marketing degree, we're relating this specifically to events and to hybrid events. Events in people management. I mentioned again earlier on about the problems and the reputational problems associated with events management when it comes to working with volunteers and the CSR implications thereof. The management itself of events. What about logistics management, supply chain management? How do we organise the supply chain, the logistics chain, in order to maximise the effectiveness of these events? And events in digital analytics. What we've got to do is be able to predict with more certainty whether or not an event is going to be successful or not. And that requires the analysis of data that tells us where we're successful and the areas in which we need to improve. So we've also backed this up with a pedagogy. The pedagogy is about learning for impact. It's something we introduced already when we work on a project called the Innovation for Global Growth, where we bring in leading employers from around the world to come to Dundee to task our students to solve strategic problems. The assessments for these students are what I call assessment for impact. What our students have to be able to do through their assessment is say we have made an impact on local and national economic performance. And so that's what we're going to be doing. The same with the events management portfolio. We're going to be working with a range of stakeholders, and it's great to see the project has already started here in Dundee. I think that we've seen the introduction of the concept, at least, of the esports arena here in Dundee, and hopefully that will then lead to skills development of people who will be working in the virtual event setting and the hybrid event setting. So I think working together as stakeholders in education and training, local government, national government is important and critical to us moving forward and being a success and continue to contribute to that success of events and their contribution to the Scottish economy. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address the conference today.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here at this event, and in the next 5 minutes I want to talk about the importance of business events at the James Hutton Institute. The James Hutton Institute, for those of you who don't know, is at Invergowrie. We're in Perth and Kinross. We're right on the corner of all the 4 regions of Tayside. We've actually been here over 100 years. We comprise a research institute with over 500 employees and on campus up to 700 people. We also have the James Hutton Foundation and James Hutton Limited. And our commercial subsidiary is really important for a way of reaching out to business and commercialising the research that we actually do. The context in which we work is around these really big global challenges that face us, the climate crisis, the nature crisis, and these are really difficult subjects. These are not things you solve on your own. We have to work in partnership with many, many people. But what we do is we apply science to try and solve these problems, both here in Scotland and internationally. And we do work in a kind of place-based way, locally in Tayside and also near Aberdeen, Craigiebuckler, where we're based, and also we have got staff in Edinburgh. And in terms of economic development, for every £1 invested in the James Hutton, we give back £12.75 to the economy. That's a very significant multiplier in return on investment. And we also bring in with investment from the UK government and from Europe, 57 million in the last 7 years. And most recently, we've been very active in working with the Tay City partners to try and bring infrastructure investment to the Tayside region. And in fact, we've won £62 million for 2 new innovation centres about linking industry to the science that we do. So infrastructure planning at local regions is something we can also help with in terms of predicting how climate change might affect land and the environment. And in terms of innovation, we're investigating all sorts of future technologies for smarter services. And the photo there shows you inside an indoor vertical farm where food can be grown in tall towers to produce food. But we also produce local services, and we help to build capacity and resilience in the community using our social sciences. Business events are quite different for us. They're often done in the field with field trials and plots of different varieties and the like, but these can still be quite big. They're done in cooperation with the Scottish Society for Crop Research, and Potatoes in Practice, for example, is the biggest event in the UK. Bringing industry and supply chain, private sector companies as well as farmers together to talk about everything about potatoes. We also do that for Arable Scotland, and our 2 new innovation centres, the International Barley Hub and Advanced Plant Growth Centre, will continue to do that in the future, bringing the industry to Tayside to actually talk about the science behind the growing of food. So a lot more will happen with that in the future. Clearly, we also partake in scientific conferences, and these typically can be of 100 to 300 if we're staging something locally. But there is the World Congress series and a whole range of scientific subjects which can be much, much larger. And we do get involved in organising those. We've helped to bring the World Congress of Soil Science to Glasgow, for example, with over 2,000 delegates. And I'd love to think that Tayside would have the ambition to maybe go for a World Congress in plant science in the future. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of the sort of things we're doing in the future, and I think there is a really bright future ahead for everybody. And And if you do want to hear more about what the James Sutton Institute is doing, we have an e-magazine called Hutton Highlights, huge variety of things that we actually get involved in. I'd encourage you to go along to the website and sign up for that and learn more about what we do. So thank you very much for listening, and hope you have a very interesting afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you this afternoon. Before moving into the Dean's office, I led a 5-year research project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council on the history of European monarchy. This involved the organization of several international conferences, bringing speakers, fellow historians, and interested members of the public to St Andrews and Tayside. In these strange days of lockdown, when the visit of the Tesco delivery van counts as an exciting highlight within an otherwise drab week of home office work and hand sanitizing, much of what we used to do and are currently prevented from doing is tinged with a warm and attractive glow of nostalgia. But even allowing for that, it is fair to say that hosting these conferences has been one of the most rewarding, enjoyable, and memorable things that I have done as a scholar. I will not bore you with the narrowly academic aspects of these events, but talk briefly about the broader human side, about the relationships formed, the networks created, the attitudes changed. Academic meetings of this kind, conferences, symposia, working parties, are triggered by a specific scholarly impulse, but they then involve the whole person. People set out on these trips as historians, biochemists, engineers, or computer scientists. But when they arrive, they also meet as fellow travelers, as communicators, as diners, as human beings. This makes these gatherings so memorable and so valuable. Connections are forged and maintained that go beyond the specific scholarly focus of the meeting. And these connections are often the most valuable part of the whole enterprise. They lead to future projects, collaborations, funding applications, joint authorship, but also to investment, tourism, higher scores in reputational metrics, and so forth. Here in St Andrews, in Fife, in Tayside, and in Scotland more widely, we're exceptionally well placed to benefit from these effects. Our research institutions and seats of learning enjoy a global reputation. They are recognized as centers of excellence and command respect from audiences around the world. But I think it is fair to say that as a geographical location, we are not yet as well known. And this is a great opportunity for all of us who want to ensure that our visitors leave us impressed, delighted, and with an abiding fondness for the region. Because almost without exception, first-time visitors are amazed by what we have to offer. The beauty of our scenery, the high standard of our facilities, the warmth of the welcome from their hosts, and the combination of an international openness with a recognizable Scottish flair, even when it's delivered by German immigrants. This means that we can build on a real symbiosis between our academic centers and our commercial colleagues and supporters in the region who help us to extend that warm welcome to our visitors. Together, we can achieve a powerful positive effect for the global recognition and connection of our work and energize important aspects of our regional economy. Over the past year, the pandemic has disrupted a great deal of this and has forced us into new forms of communication and of online conviviality. But now we are in a position where we can look forward to a return to gatherings, conferences, and meetings. We will not be able to turn the clock back though, nor would we want to. We have learned new techniques, and not all of this is just for emergency use. It's just an inferior replacement of the real thing. Digital communications have enabled us to be more inclusive, to involve people who would otherwise have stayed away because travel would have been too cumbersome or too expensive. They have opened up our conversations to a great variety of voices. Distances have shrunk, and the world has come even more easily to St Andrews and Tayside. Only last week, for example, I was part of an interview panel where the first applicant dialed in from Canberra. We then went via Singapore and Edinburgh to New Jersey, and finally ended up in California, where the final candidate had just finished a very early breakfast when we talked to her. In the future, we will want to retain what is good, inclusive, enabling, and effective about the new ways, and blend this with all the great assets and advantages of the expertise that we have built up here in the region over so many years and decades. I'm convinced this will enable us to harness our cooperation even more fruitfully and showcase what is excellent about our scholarship even more widely to our guests who travel here in person and to our digital visitors who may otherwise never have traveled, who are now keener than ever to visit us one day to develop and deepen our new connections. I'm delighted that the University of St Andrews will be a part of this. Many thanks for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you to each of you for your contribution and for your support for the Pathfinders programme. I'd like to highlight that the programme, through the Business Events Development Group and the Pathfinders Committee, takes a regional approach and includes the academic institutions in Dundee, Angus, Fife and Perthshire. There exists much opportunity to widen and grow our Pathfinders programme in tandem with future progress and innovation in these institutions. We are grateful for their buy-in, which is both important to us and also mutually beneficial in supporting their projects. In our next section, we want to give confidence for the future that business events can and should be part of a wide, broader economic strategy beyond tourism. We take a look at the legacy of business events, the beyond tourism value of international association meetings to create a powerful platform to advocate their positive societal impact. I'd like to introduce you first to Leslie Williams, Managing Director, Best Cities Global Alliance, who will also be joined by Professor Dr. Alexander Baldacchino, Professor of Medicine, Psychiatry and Addictions at the University of St Andrews, and the President of the International Society of Addiction Medicine. Leslie will present first on the beyond tourism value of international conferences, followed by Alex, who will give a case study of the ISAM Dundee 2015, the largest conference ever held in Dundee.
Thank you for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I've been tasked with talking about legacy, the beyond tourism impacts of business events, and in particular, the Incredible Impacts programme that Best Cities runs alongside ICA, which is the International Convention and Congress Association. So just very quickly, for those of you that are not familiar with Best Cities, we are an alliance of 12 international meeting destinations. We've been around for 20 years. We tried to celebrate our 20th anniversary last year, but we couldn't, obviously, no parties. So we tried for 21 this year, but I can't see that happening anytime soon. But anyway, one of the challenges around legacy is that it's often misunderstood. People don't necessarily understand what is meant by legacy. There's confusion. And it means different things to different people. I mean, my opinion is, I think legacy is actually an overdone word these days. It's assigned to a lot of things, that there's no common understanding around it. It's not easily measured, but it absolutely happens. It's very easy to measure the success of attracting an international meeting to a destination in terms of the coffee cups, the delegates, the dinners, that type of thing. And these are really important measures, particularly in the last year when our industry has suffered so much. But it's only part of the story. Delegates attend conferences to learn, and this transfer of knowledge in learning and in information between delegates, between research institutes, between cities, can result in a wide range of outcomes. And these outcomes can be economic development, it could be innovation in a certain field, it could be personal development, talent acquisition, a whole variety of outcomes that stay on, develop and thrive after the conference has left the destination. And it's those serendipitous encounters that happen in conferences that can often lead to the most amazing legacy. The story of Ian Fraser, who is, I think, still an immunologist. He attended a gastroenterology conference back in the 1980s, and he bumped into Dr. Gabriel Medley. Now, they started discussing, was there a link between cancer and the papillomavirus? And this conversation led Ian Fraser onto a path that ultimately developed the Hpv vaccine. Now, this is a vaccine that's used right across the world, and it has the potential to eradicate cervical cancer within a generation. So, I mean, that is real legacy, and that started out of a conversation at a conference. And this is why at Best Cities, we're really passionate about legacy and the beyond tourism effects of international events. The more that destinations and associations can understand what that long-lasting legacy can be from an event, then the more that we can enhance the depth and the pace of that transformation and change. So our purpose at Best Cities, we harness the power of collaboration and community to create positive impact through business events. This is what we're all about. We want to help clients achieve meaningful impact. We want to work with associations not just to deliver the economics, but to deliver the political or the societal impact that's left behind in one of our partner destinations after the conference has been. And nowadays, it's not so much about what you can offer. We can all offer a meeting venue, hotels, accessibility, walkable city. It's about understanding the goals and objective of the client, of the association, of the event, and providing solutions to support these aims. Here at Best Cities, we want to get to know the client inside out, not outside in. We look to build relationships that enables us to work in partnership with the International Association that buys into their organisational and their event objectives, and we work together to ensure success. And the better destinations and associations can understand these objectives and help identify solutions, the better you're going to stand out. And it's a way of offering a benefit beyond the facility and the financial offering. So in 2017, we formed a collaboration with ICA and created the Incredible Impacts Programme. And this is our way to support legacy and encourage others to consider the long-lasting positive impacts that can be left behind from associations. It also gives us and ICA a platform to advocate on the positive societal impact of international association meetings. We want the Incredible Impact winners to be a source of reference and a source of inspiration in the future for event planners. And we're into our 5th year, and really, it's never been a more important time after all the nonsense that's gone on to celebrate the beyond tourism impact of meetings and celebrate the inspiring work that international associations can deliver. And it's also a great opportunity, as we have gone through such turbulent times, just to take a step back and recognise the incredible impacts that can be achieved through face-to-face meetings. The lives that have been changed, the barriers that possibly have been broken down. So the programme provides 3 grants of $7,500 to associations to encourage them to tell the story about the impact from their event. And to apply for a grant, there's certain criteria. We're looking for evidence of legacy, a track record in legacy, either in a current project or in a future legacy project that the organisation might be planning. So examples would be, you know, an outreach programme, the transfer of knowledge wider than the 4 conference walls, particularly in developing countries. It might be increasing the awareness of healthcare or environmental issues. It might be changing government policy, or it might be future, you know, advancing future intellectual leaders, or encouraging the youth or women to come into a certain field. And the programme, it's based on, we're looking for great examples rather than best in class, because we want to provide a stimulus for other projects. And we also want to grow the understanding of the positive impact from international association meetings. It's an independent jury. It's made up of associations and past winners. So this is associations telling their story, judged by associations. And destinations can also put a submission in. So if you have an international meeting happening in your area in the next whenever, or it happened last year, the deadline is the 30th of June. So you can either apply on behalf of the association, or you can twist the association's arm to apply for the grant. And as I say, it's $7,500. So these were the winners from last year. We were really pleased. We didn't know how it would go last year, but we actually had the largest number of submissions that we've ever had, which was fantastic. But what was even better, there was more diversity in the applications. It's very easy to talk about impact in terms of medical or healthcare, but the winners this year received awards in recognition of their hosted events excelling in sustainability, accessibility, and ecology. So EcoCity Builders, they held their conference in Vancouver in 2019, and their goal was to support the accessibility of less developed country delegates, and also local economically disadvantaged people to participate in the summit. And they also wanted to help with the long-term environmental footprint of the cities that they host their conference in. So to do this, in 2019, they introduced a tiered registration. So students and delegates from developing countries paid 1/3 of the registration fee. And they worked in conjunction with a local financial institution who funded 20 full registration fees for youth, for social enterprise entrepreneurs, and from people from Indigenous heritage. They also launched the first EcoCity Centre, which was a post-summit training initiative to help the destinations that they visit with their conference improve on reduce their environmental footprint. And Microbial Ecology, I knew I'd say that wrong, Microbial Ecology, they held their conference in Leipzig in 2019, and what they wanted to do was to engage with members of the public and educate them about the importance of ecology and inspire an interest in the field from a new audience. So they worked with the city and they held the Night of the Microbes. And the Night of the Microbes was a free to attend event for the public. And they had bands and music, but they also had very inspiring sort of TED-like talks from ecologists to explain the importance of ecology. And for those people who couldn't join in person, they live streamed it and they put it up on YouTube. So people could continue learning after the conference had left Leipzig. And the idea was to spark a new interest in the field. And finally, the Seroptimists, who were winners in 2020, held their conference in Kuala Lumpur in July in 2019. And they wanted to support an underdeveloped village, and they were looking at diversity and inclusion at the same time. So they partnered with local members in a community, and they basically created a new water system that meant that the villagers had access to clean water for drinking and cooking. And they educated the villagers, in particular the women, in personal hygiene and sanitation. They taught them how to organic farming. They taught them how to maintain the system. There was 5 girls who achieved a diploma in welding. I can't remember why it was welding, but it was in welding, and they all got jobs at the end of it. And the collective outcome for the women and the girls was that the empowerment through the project to participate in future decisions of the local community. So very varied examples, but some really good examples of legacy that have been left behind from a conference. And you might say, well, that's great, but what can we do here in Dundee or in Scotland or the local region? Well, I think understanding the goals of an international association and demonstrating how your city, how Dundee or how Scotland can help move the association closer to those aims will help you win more conferences. And that at the end of the day brings in the delegates, the coffee cups and the dinners. But also if you can identify how your region or how Scotland can benefit from having the world's intellectual experts on your doorstep, and how can that benefit the local community? It might just be the local scientist having the opportunity to present their work, or just learning from all these world experts. You know, that can really benefit the local community once the conference has left. So there's lots of ways that you can do that. And I believe we're going to hear now from Professor Baldacchino, who held his conference in 2015, and some of the legacy benefits that resulted from that. So on that note, I'll hand over to Professor Baldacchino.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me over. My name is Alex Baldacchino, and I'm really honored that I'm able to participate in this workshop, which I hold very dearly. The reason is because Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau and other stakeholders in Dundee and surrounding areas have helped me organize an international conference in 2015, which we all know and is known as ISEM Dundee 2015 Congress. So for me, I think it's important to put some context. What is ISEM? ISEM is the International Society of Addiction Medicine. It is an international global organization that has around 10,000 members, either individual paid members or members as part of affiliate societies that the International Society of Addiction Medicine hosts and supports throughout the globe. The International Society of Addiction Medicine believes in global excellence in addiction medicine. And the manifesto identified include the following commitments: the advanced knowledge on addiction-related issues, recognize that clinicians, not just medical physicians, but all clinicians worldwide have a major role to play in the management of conditions with other stakeholders. It believes in enhancing the competencies of the clinician's role, emphasizing the importance of continual education activities and other clinical governance activities. And last but not least, establish a consensus and position documents which include practice guidelines. So ISEM's vision was that around a strong and forward-looking society in addiction medicine that supports its members and affiliate organizations to deliver high-quality patient-centered care all over the world. And in 2012, following a bid by at the time the University of Dundee, which I used to work in with, and we were successful to host the 2015 ISEM World Congress. It was a bold move. It was unique in a way that, you know, previously these type of conferences are usually held in big known cities, such as in the UK, London, Edinburgh, or Glasgow. So that was a challenge that I could not resist. And Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau, and as I said, other stakeholders like the the Duncan Jordan College of Art and Design, together with NHS Tayside, NHS 5, and other organizations were happy to take on that challenge. It took 3 years to organize, and as a result of that, we were seen to be a very successful conference, and that was based around understanding that Dundee at that time did not host conferences more than 500 participants, and that we needed to up a notch in order to accommodate around 700, 750 delegates from all over the world, which, as you can imagine, have all their needs and wants. And that, as a result of that, we also wanted to get the community to be aware of the conference and also to be part of that conference. And as a result, we organized, together with a very full 4-day scientific conference with 5 to 6 parallel streams happening at the same time. We also organized an art and culture festival, which was open for the public, and together with all the other social events. And that for ISM, certainly for ISM and for the addiction medicine community worldwide, was a game changer. The conference was not only successful, but it also highlighted the importance of the getting together, the relationship that we have and we need to have in order to support each other, in order to provide high quality care for our citizens who are suffering from substance use disorders, and that might be alcohol, illicit drugs, gambling, gaming, and other types of addictive behaviors. So following the ISM conference itself, we thought about what type of legacy this conference would provide, not just to the ISM community, but also to the citizens of Dundee.
Professor Baldacchino, legacy, as I said earlier, means different things to different people. And as a result of that, often the focus is on the short-term outcomes from a meeting and less on the long-term legacy. There's often little planning on the long-term effects. You seem to have, from the information that I read, a fairly definite idea early on of what legacy meant to you and what legacy you wanted your conference to leave behind in Dundee and in Scotland. Can you explain to the audience what legacy meant to you and why it was so important for your conference?
Thank you for that question. For me, legacy is around relationships. We are increasingly living in a globalized environment where we rely even more on meaningful relationships that we create through our encounters, face-to-face and/or digital. This I call relationship capital. It is not about the number of, or not just about the number of delegates that have stayed in Dundee during the conference and its financial benefits. It is about the memories created for the 700 plus delegates that attended the 5-day ISM Dundee 2015 World Congress, and the memories that they have taken with them, that they have created within those 5 days, and the opportunities to meet different stakeholders, different individuals, and different communities. The mainstream ISM Scientific Congress, the Dundee Art Festival on Addictions, the Gala Dinner, and other activities created a different but interconnected atmosphere of collegiateness and excellence. But most important within this, what I would call relationship capital, is the fact that people come to these conferences understanding that there's so much to learn around this very important topic and so much to do and so much more to do to these vulnerable populations, that it is an important message of humanity and humility.
Thank you. Looking at the ASAM website, the mission of the association is to deliver high quality, patient-centered care all over the world. Could you tell us, how did the conference contribute to that mission? Or has patient care improved in Dundee or Scotland as a result of the city hosting the conference?
Thank you. ISM Dundee 2015 Congress has certainly invigorated the ISM organization and its community that it represents. Since 2015, ISM has set up 5 special interest groups on the topics of spirituality, neuroscience, policy and practice, and finally, social science and philosophy, together with behavioral science, gaming, gambling. It has opened membership to not just medical profession, but others in the field, nurses, pharmacists, and other professions, including students, undergraduate, postgraduate students, and scientists in the field of addiction medicine. It has created an early career section called ISM Next. It has reconnected with international organizations such as the United Nations, the European Monitoring Center for Drug Abuse, amongst many others, to lead on important topics and issues of global concern. Again, as a result of ISM Dundee 2015 Congress, it has welcomed around 20 affiliated addiction medicine societies from all continents of the world, of the globe. We continue to organize yearly global conferences, and since Dundee, we have been fortunate enough to have other successful conferences in Abu Dhabi, Busan, New Delhi, and Victoria, Canada. And in the next 3 years, we aim to have other conferences in Malta, in Marrakesh, and in Athens. However, we now also have monthly webinars on relevant topics and other similar activities. And this is as a result of the current COVID situation that allowed us to use the digital platform even more and maximize these unique opportunities. However, all the above was conducted under the core belief that if one supports the clinician, the quality of service provided to our patients who we serve will be much, much improved. It is this important aspect of the ISM Dundee 2015 legacy that has helped shape the way we conduct our service provision to substance using population in Scotland. Since 2015, Scotland has led the way to consolidating the principles of care and the medication-assisted treatment standards to this population. ISM Dundee 2015 has been a catalyst and has played a small but important part in helping shape these initiatives.
You mentioned in the case study that one of the outcomes was to increase the European membership for the organisation, which you did really successfully. What was the long-term benefits of achieving that goal for both Dundee and the association?
I mentioned the establishment of the interest groups earlier on. To give some examples, these interest groups are currently working on consensus statements and position papers around the using of opioids, painkillers in acute post-operative pain, the care and management of pregnant drug-using population, the use and associated guidelines on how to use digital platform in the diagnosis and treatment of individuals with substance use disorder, including alcohol. And finally, the necessary mechanisms that need to be in place to sustain a COVID-19 therapeutic environment. These are some examples that reflect the energy around creating a critical mass of well-connected communities in order to support an improved knowledge base. We are currently advising the EU drug agencies, as I mentioned earlier, the EMCDDA, on some of these issues, together with a meaningful relationship with most of the European addiction medicine communities. And all this energy tends to percolate in Scotland and in the region where Dundee City and Fife is included, where there is that focus around improving the welfare of the individuals, utilizing these innovative methods, but also utilizing the new evidence base that we have as a result of these interest groups have been successful in doing.
I noticed also in the case study that you bumped into a colleague that said you've become very international, and you talk of having influence in other parts of the world. Would you say then that one of the legacies of the conference is better knowledge of addiction medicine treatments has attracted new talent into the field, both here and overseas? And has Dundee perhaps become, I know it was already recognised as a centre of excellence, but is it seen more as a centre of excellence in the field of addiction medicine?
Thank you so much. Thank you. Certainly, Dundee hosting the conference has created a different way of understanding the geopolitical perceptions that a lot of people in and outside Dundee had. For example, I had questions when we were preparing this conference in Dundee, which are quite understandable, but sometimes they're quite frustrating as well, is questions such as, why not organize this conference in London or Edinburgh? Is Dundee a suburb of Edinburgh? Some even ask, is it a suburb of London? It has helped Dundee to be outward looking and much more aware of its potential in the Scottish and global market. Connections to the airport and other travel opportunities, for example, was one of the main discussions around organizing the logistics of this conference. It has connected populations that might not have done so, as the conference created focused and positive activities, such as the scientific congress itself, but also, more important, connections with the communities when we organized in parallel to the scientific congress, the ISIM Dundee 2015 Art and Culture Festival. Personally, it has provided my colleagues and I to understand the value of international platforms and confidence to be an active participant in these environments. This not only helped me and others to apply for more senior positions, but also helped support others to be active internationally and still work and live in Dundee. And this can only be a good thing. And as you said, Dundee being already a recognized Centre of Excellence became even more recognized an international Centre of Excellence.
And finally, Professor Baldacchino, has the local community benefited from Dundee having hosted this conference?
Well, this is an important but difficult question to answer. I'm sure the Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau will give you all the necessary financial and cultural gains as a result of hosting the largest ever conference in Dundee in 2015. However, with substance users recovered and active and their families invited to create pieces of work for the Art and Culture Festival under the expert supervision of the Duncan Jordanstone College of Art and Design, has done something unique and special. I think this is a point that could have and still should be a point to improve. When organizing ISIM Dundee 2015, we requested that the square in front of the Caird Hall will be a place where citizens of Dundee and beyond can sit and listen, ask, and be advised, etc., around the topics that are being discussed inside the Caird Hall. However, that was considered too innovative. Some even said too risky to do so. Why is that? Our thoughts were that we wanted to connect with what was happening in the Caird Hall with the day-to-day realities happening outside the Caird Hall in Dundee City and beyond. And it is these little, I would call them little, but important things around how Dundee can provide unique forums and unique opportunities when inviting people from all over the world can create such a unique brand. And opportunities come and go, of course, and we can only learn from past experiences.
Thank you, Professor Baldacchino. It's been a fascinating insight into your conference, and I have to say hats off to yourself and also to Dundee for going back 5 years later to see what has happened as a result of hosting the conference, because legacy at the end of the day, it is long term. It's not easy to measure it, but you've given some fantastic examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you to both Leslie and to Alex for that session. The initial economic benefit of increased visitor numbers, meals in restaurants, visits to attractions, etc., is of course what we hope for in economic growth. However, I think that section quite clearly shows the impacts of hosting business events are broad and wide, reaching and go far beyond tourism. We'll now take a short break of 5 minutes before our next session, which is on thought leadership and the prospects for the recovery of business events. During the break, you'll see an online poll on the screen, which you'll be able to enter, and the results we will have a look at later. Welcome back to everybody. In this next session, we're going to take a look at the global business events industry and hear on the plans for global recovery, and also from Visit Scotland and also from our Convention Bureau on the local recovery perspective. Our first speaker in this session is Greg Talley of Talley Management Group.
Good afternoon. I am just delighted to join my colleagues in the business event space from Dundee and Angus to talk about the future of business events. What does it look like and where's it going? I guess the best news to start with is I'm bullish on our business and I'm an optimist at heart. And when you look at why, who, and what we are as humans, we need to connect as people. We have to connect as people. That's how we build trust. That's how we build relationships. It's just who we are. So I think we're always going to have face-to-face events. Are they going to be different? Yes, they will. But are they going to go away? No, they won't. So I'm very confident that our business is going to come back strong. And I think the destinations that understand what you're talking about and hearing today are going to be the destinations that win in this new world that we're all going to be facing. So what does that all really mean? Well, we know that business events accomplish a number of different things. Number one, we know that they're accelerators of social and economic development by bringing in outside experts into the areas that a destination cares about. That starts to connect people and build up knowledge, build up contacts, and move those sectors forward. And that's exactly the second point. They are amplifiers of local knowledge and talent, because if you can put your experts that are from your area on a stage at a business event that's attended by other global experts, what is that just doing? It's elevating and amplifying Dundee and the region in the eyes of everyone who's attending, whether they're there live or whether they're there online. That's part of the power. What else happens? We know that business events build bridges between local economic sectors and the rest of the world. So whatever those economic sectors are or those academic centers of excellence, business events create those bridges, create those contacts, and then build networks. And networks are critical. Global networks are critical because that's where investors come from. That's where thought leadership comes from. That's where those serendipitous conversations happen in those networks that create and inspire change, new ideas, and creativity. And that can all happen in business events. But what else do we know? We absolutely know that our business events can be, absolutely know that our business events can be facilitators of the global economic pandemic recovery. And why is that? Because once again, if we can bring key folks from around the globe in identified and clear sectors together in Dundee, we know magic can happen. We know for all those regions we just talked about, that's what can help things grow faster, get back on their feet faster, create new opportunities faster. That's the real value right now of why what you're talking about and what you're planning to go forward with is so critically important. The business case, frankly, has been proven all around the world. When we align business event acquisition or creation, so either those that we want to go get that exist somewhere in the world and bring them to Dundee, or we identify a gap or a space where we could create an event because of our unique assets in Dundee, when we can align that with the economic development, the key economic sectors and knowledge clusters in local academia, that means we can grow faster, become recognized as a global regional hub for whatever those key sectors and knowledge clusters are. That case has been proven. And how do we know that? Because who's done it? The destinations that are best in class around the world have been outstanding at this. Singapore essentially has done this for its entire career in the business event space. And it's one of the things that catapulted them from basically an island nation with no natural resources to become the global hub that it is, because it identified the industries it wanted to be world class in, and then started a business event strategy to invite those groups in and create an infrastructure where those industries would use Singapore as a hub for everything they were doing in Asia Pacific. And it was all based around creating and building a business event strategy to bring those global experts in those key sectors into Singapore. Brilliant. Who else is doing really well at this? Korea's doing outstanding at this, particularly Seoul. Australia has also stepped into this in just an amazing way. They've got really great case studies and stories about how they've been successful. Rwanda, you look at an entire nation that basically said, we think we can be the business event space in Central Africa. And from the president on down, we're totally aligned on what they wanted to be, what it was going to take, and what they were going to go after. And they've become #2 on the continent behind South Africa in terms of hosting business events in the entire African continent. Geneva is a great example. Copenhagen, and of course, Sydney is part of Australia. So there are models out there that they've shown, and the studies have shown this works. I mentioned creation as another strategy. And who's done that? 2 really great examples. London Tech Week, totally a creation by the thought leaders in London to say, what if we created this time and space and invited a bunch of the world events or created events to come in over something we're going to call London Tech Week. It is now a must event on the global calendar for technology demonstration, showcase, and for investors to meet and greet. Austin, Texas, South by Southwest, another brilliant example of just creating something that now put Austin on the global stage. So again, we know it can be done. So how? What's the model? It's really what I just said in that business case, plus a couple other things. Number 1, we need to align our assets and our stakeholders. So the assets and stakeholders that are in those economic clusters that we want to highlight, or in those academic knowledge cluster areas that we also feel we have an edge in based on the outstanding institutions that you've got in your region. And then activate the ambassadors through the Pathfinder program that Dundee has developed. I think it's one of best in class around the globe. So you activate them, and then you develop a proactive sales and marketing strategy around that entire alignment, utilizing your Pathfinders to get there. That is exactly how you do it. It's what the Convention and Visitors Bureau is doing for you, and I think what your community is actually doing for yourself better than a lot of others. This also aligns to Scotland's strategy, national strategy, to really look at aligning its business event strategy against policy goals, against policy aims. And that ties into economic development. It ties into where we've got academic centers of excellence to build from. So I also just wanted to give you a little bit of a view from my seat as someone who's been in the business event space for over 30 years, working all around the globe. With events and associations, global associations, literally in every region of the world. I think we're all hearing some of the same things, but just to mark it, I think we're seeing return of face-to-face starting Q3, Q4 of this year at the earliest. Starting to see a little bit of slippage. It's all dependent, obviously, around what's happening with the vaccine distribution, what's happening with the variants, and what's happening, quite frankly, with border crossings and the protocols that we're going to have. And without an international standard, that's going to be hard. As you see down in the middle of my slide, what are the lingering barriers? The health and safety fears and protocols. So two sides to that same story. What are the fears of your audience? How comfortable are they in making a trip? What we know is going to come back first are going to be smaller regional meetings because there's less angst around that, right? Can I drive 2 hours and feel more comfortable than getting on a plane, crossing international borders? Of course, the answer to that is yes. So it's one reason why we know what's going to come back first are going to be smaller corporate meetings and regional events, and then build to national before we get to international. And part of that is because I don't see it coming together fast enough for an international protocol about travelers and business travelers in crossing borders. And until we get that, I think that's going to be a problem. Then obviously, we're all seeing it, we're all feeling it. There's going to be a lingering economic fallout from COVID-19 that's including M&A activity that's increasing because as businesses either have closed or reduced in scale, that's created opportunity for bigger players in the space to come in and take it over. That hurts us on the sponsorship side, it hurts us on the exhibitor side as it relates to business events. So that's the problem. I think what everybody's kind of saying is this issue of when do we get back to pre-COVID-19 levels? And I think I'm seeing right now, and the folks I'm talking to, 2024 at the earliest. And even at that, the projections are that's probably only going to hit 75% of 2019 levels. So we're in for a long haul. So again, it means how do we be really smart about what we're going to do to build up the business event industry in our region, in Dundee and Angus, in the smartest way possible. And that's where I think a very smart business event strategy that you're really executing with your team right now. How do you amp that up and carry it forward? So out of this, however, I do think we're looking at some permanent changes in our space that we all need to keep in mind. One of the biggies is corporate travel is going to be down somewhere between 25 and 40%. There's just no getting around the fact that for the last year, major corporations and even small corporations realize that they could keep doing good business, and in some cases really good business, without spending billions upon billions on business travel. That's a concern because that kind of a decrease is going to have an enormous impact on the airline industry, an enormous impact on the hotel industry, the restaurant industry, and everything else. So that's going to be a problem, and I think it will limit the growth as we go forward, which is one reason why, number two, the digital genie is never going back in the bottle. Just not going to happen. And we've learned how to do it. So with constrained budgets, you're going to have folks saying, you can attend that meeting, but you're only going to attend virtually. Or if you used to go to 10 or 12 events around the world in your industry space, corporate execs are going to say, justify each and every one of those, and maybe you can do half that number, but you're not going to do the same. Find out how we can play digitally and make all that happen. So that also means that the experience that we create for those live events that are going to happen, they're probably going to be smaller than they were as we certainly come out of the gate. Any live event is probably predicted to start somewhere in the 30 to 50% range of what it was 2019 pre-COVID. But it means that that experience becomes even more important for us to attract them back. It used to be just about content. Content was king. But for us to get back now to face-to-face events, we're going to have to balance between the content on the one hand and then creating an exceptional experience for the people that are actually live in the audience, but also those who are going to be participating digitally. That means we really need to rethink everything about what we're presenting, how we're presenting it, and the experience we're creating for both audiences. And lastly, I think this creates an imperative, a strategic imperative for all organizations to look at how you can build strategic alliances and alignment with destination partners, with other organizations in your space. This is really a time to think differently about how you're getting done what you're there to get done. And could you collaborate with someone who would help you get there farther and faster and maybe cheaper? And how do you find that alignment and how do you build on that alignment that is based in your destination? So those are a few of the permanent changes I see out of this. But as I said, I think I'm bullish on this industry. I'm bullish on how we spend time together and what we're going to be doing. And I'm counting on raising a glass with colleagues around the world in the second half of 2021. Thank you so much.
Greg, thank you very much for that. Really interesting stuff, and it's really, we're honoured to have somebody who can give us the global perspective and somebody who has the experience of the industry as to finger on the pulse, I think. Very much appreciated. We're now going to move to Neil Brownlee of Visit Scotland Business Events to give us the Scottish perspective.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm delighted to be here, and thank you to Karen and Mike and the steering group of the conference for inviting me to say a few words. I've been with Visit Scotland Business Events for 12 years now, and I've seen quite a lot of changes since then in terms of how business events are positioned, how they're marketed, how they're sold, and it's fair to say that we haven't seen anything like the last 12 months. But I wanted to talk to you today about three things, really: the recovery of the sector over the next year and a bit, also the future. Do business events have a future when we're obviously happy to meet like this forever, and also the role and positioning of business events moving forward. I'm just going to rattle through these things, and hopefully there'll be some takeaways there, and I know Mike will have some searing questions to ask me later on. Just in terms of the recovery, we are seeing updates from the Prime Minister and the First Minister, and I think at the moment it's clear that the return of face-to-face meetings, or in real life meetings, or whatever we want to call it, is some way off. I know from public health officials within Scotland there's complete understanding that the abilities of our major conference centres and certainly our hotels probably exceed what is demanded of other parts of this of the economy, like retail, but the clinical problem is just fundamentally having people in one space is the issue, and that's clearly going to be overcome at some point in the next 6 months. I do think we might see the tail end of a UK season, or a Scotland-wide season, or UK season for corporate meetings and events, hopefully from August onwards. Certainly in the autumn, I can't see any scenario where we wouldn't have face-to-face meetings by the autumn, unless something goes very badly wrong. And I think our role at Visit Scotland Business Events between now and then will be to continue what we've been doing the last year, which is to try and ensure that our key stakeholders, the main hotels and venues that drive business into Scotland from the main markets of North America, Europe, and don't forget the rest of the UK, that they actually remain in front of their clients, many of whom, of course, were on furlough. And it's our job with the national brand and the national umbrella, if you like, to give stakeholders in Dundee, Angus, Fife, and Perthshire the ability to stay in touch, because that's all we can do just now, stay in touch. People don't want to be sold to, they didn't want to be sold to in the middle of last year, but there's the difference between selling to somebody and educating them on what Scotland has to offer, and also ensuring that they realise that Scotland is still here and will still be here when we come out of this. But our job really is to get the marketing clout out there, get a new campaign out, very much with an eye on late 21, but definitely for 22, 23, 24. The pipeline for then is actually very strong. The associations market is rather committed to an annual gathering. It's where they make most of their finances to be viable as an entity, and we are very confident, as is the global sector, that business events are going to come back as soon as the vaccine takes effect. And yes, we'll see UK this year, Europe next year, maybe a smattering of international late 22, but certainly 22 onwards, everything will be up and running. But until then, it is all about the UK markets and the local markets as soon as we can. A quick word about the future of events. Obviously, we've been doing Zoom now for a year, which has been lovely. But the shortcomings of trying to meet like this and conduct business and to meet objectives, corporate or personal, that they've been quite evident from the outset. And it's true that research shows that people have hated the digital events and virtual platform equivalents they've been doing, but also they're getting used to them, and also the digital platforms are improving because over time they've had plenty of time to improve. And you won't be surprised to hear that research by PCMA, the Professional Convention Management Association, it shows that the missing link remains, the unconquered territory, is any kind of functionality for effective networking. And we know that the really important parts of a conference or a meeting is not just meeting people in the bar, it's the serendipity of the conversations that take place in a bar or over dinner or in the corridor in the coffee break. That's where the business is done, that's where the pivotal moments occur, and that is why face-to-face is going to come back. The other reason is that we have hybrid events, we have digital events. Hybrid has been, or digital has been quite an eye-opener for many associations and festivals and conferences, because they're reaching an audience they never knew existed. And hybrid will remain a key part. It might become a bigger part, but we will get to the stage, within the next 2 years, where hybrid does not cannibalize the in-person attendance. So people who are always going to go in person will go. And there is a mantra that if you don't go, you don't know. And I'm one of those people. And I think there'll be a lot of remodeling of business models. But face-to-face business events are going to come back just in the same way as football fans will be back in stadiums and people will go to live music. I heard an example of your digital being like buying your groceries online. You can buy your groceries online, it's very convenient, but we don't actually mind going to the supermarket to buy our groceries. And so it's a bit of both. We can now pick and choose. But for the face-to-face, for the experience, and for going to new places and meeting new people, it's going to come back. There's just no question about that. Although I do feel that it's very much our role in the business events sector, including hotels and venues, to keep pushing that point. It'll come back. So I'm very confident about that. A quick word about the role of business events moving forward. For the past year, business events has been in the hospitality bucket and the mass gatherings bucket. And this has been quite a painful place to be. And it ultimately has been because we're perceived to be part of tourism economy, or purely as tourism generators. We are generators of room nights. And the first question anyone asks about a conference that I'm trying to bring to Scotland, or Karen's trying to bring, or anyone else, is, well, how much are they going to spend? Now, that's great. We can measure to an infinite degree what they can spend. Business events, delegates, conferences and meetings, they are the most trackable, measurable area of the visitor economy by miles. We know everything. We know the flight, we know where they ate, we know who they sat next to, we know what transport company, we know where they had the gala dinner, we know everything. We know what sector they come from. It just blows every other measurement out of the water. And that's always been the case. That's the frustration. We do this by default. Track and trace is normal for business events. We know everyone who turns up. But I think the tourism impact is massive. It's very important. And clearly the hotels, they need the room nights. But for many of the hotels, the corporate market, the corporate meetings market, the MICE market, is a critical part of their business plan. Think of Apex, think of Fairmont, St Andrews. These are is bread and butter. And even in places like Las Vegas, Caesars Expo, a massive new meetings destination, Vegas has been arguing for years, if all the money truly just came through the gaming tables, they wouldn't bother building these massive meeting spaces and function rooms. And it's just the same in Scotland. It's a very important part of what we do. But the critical point we need to get to is why does Scotland, or Dundee and Angus and Fife and Perthshire, want business events? We want the room nights, but the key thing is that it positions the region and Scotland at a national and an international level in areas that are far beyond tourism. It's way beyond tourism. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of the universities and institutes on the call, they know that the academic prowess and credentials that they have. But when an association congress is looking for somewhere, and I'm sure Greg will have touched on this or will be touching on it, they're not just looking for the lovely venue, it's the academic credentials. And in many cases, and we've seen it on the news quite a lot in the last few weeks and days, the University of Strathclyde, University of St Andrews, University of Edinburgh, Scotland's at the forefront of all these things. And we can use business events as platforms, policy platforms, to pursue Scotland's ambitions in whatever policy area the Scottish Government is keen on. And this might sound like an infinite list of possible options, and there is indeed an infinite list of congresses and association meetings that we can go after. I think in the ICA database there's 12,500 conferences that rotate around Europe, which theoretically we could attract to Scotland, and they'd all fit into Scotland. We've done that critical check as well, will it fit? But in terms of where we go to find the priorities, there are three areas which we call the triple lock. One is the National Performance Framework, and these are very broad brush ideas about where Scotland wants to be perceived, whether it's looking at education or reducing our contribution to global warming, and sustainable transport, healthcare, everything. It's 15 very broad brush things. Then underneath that, underpinning that, are about 100 national performance indicators. These are slightly more granular, but it's like infant mental health, it's like dental health in older people, it's intelligent transport systems, it's drug addiction, it's loads of things that we can tie it into. And then if that wasn't enough, we then have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this means we can triple lock the aspirations of Dundee and Angus and Perthshire and Fife to actually promote Scotland, but also themselves as regions, in making the world a better place. And I know that sounds very lofty, but this is fundamentally what business events do. They bring educated, affluent, brainy people to discuss problems that might afflict the region or the nation or indeed the world. And whether it's haemophilia or perhaps finding a vaccine for a pandemic, to take a topical example, a cure for cancer, this is where these things are discussed, business events. And we need to harness this notion that business events, of course, are part of the visitor economy. Of course, we are part of tourism. But the reason that we should want to pursue them is because they are catalysts for social and economic progress. And that is the big step change we have to make over the next year. We can't emerge from the pandemic with everyone thinking all we're doing is generating room nights and in some cases adding to over-tourism. We are sending business events to take place in resort hotels. They have a massive supply chain, artisan chocolate makers for turn down gifts for high-end incentives from North America. It's a massive, massive part of the supply chain. And a really big opportunity is that it doesn't only include tourism businesses, it's also academia. It's our academic centers of excellence. It's not an obvious grouping, and it's something we need to shout loud and hard about, because I think it's a world-class, game-changing opportunity for Scotland. And we're here to change the world, to make it a better place. And that's what business events can do if we seize the opportunity. Thank you.
Neil, thank you very much for that. I sense we're playing a long game, and today's conference is very much about planning and preparation for the future. You spoke about large conferences coming to Scotland, and you also spoke about small conferences. And I think we know that in the conferences 250 and below forms an awful lot of the worldwide conferencing that happens through associations. When realistically do you think that these smaller conferences will go back to face-to-face?
I think, as well as the size, it'll be depending on where the delegates come from. So I think for the smaller conferences, whether it's a corporate meeting or an association, the associations typically will have their destinations locked in. So I think for the next, from September onwards, I'd be surprised if there are many UK associations that don't already know where they're going to go in 22, for that matter, and 23 is likely to be the first open year. I could be wrong on that, but I think for the corporate meetings, I think there's going to be huge pent-up demand in the autumn of people wanted to get away anywhere, frankly. And I know if somebody offered me to attend a meeting in London, tomorrow, and I was allowed to go, I'd go in a flash just for a change of scene. But I think Scottish meetings, I think the hotels and venues need some fuel running through their coffers. And so whether it's 10 people, 50 people, I'd like to think they will come back in the autumn, if not earlier. For those that plan an annual event, I think it's all going to depend on what they might already have contracted, and which I certainly think means 2022. But who knows how things might speed up.
I think in terms of our local, regional, and the city of Dundee, we have a wealth of business leaders, world leaders in academia, in other business sectors that clearly are all members of these associations all around the world. How can we, the Convention Bureau or the Business Events Development Group, how can we raise the profile of business events and demonstrate that opportunity and to take it in the more broader economic strategy context rather than just within tourism? How do we actually do that? What do we need to do over these next year to 2 years?
I think it's a combination of joining the original concept of an ambassador program, which I know is very well established in the region we're discussing. And that's effectively about saying to an academic, or a business person, you're going to all these wonderful conferences every year in all these wonderful places, or you're going to an association of whatever, every year. We need to enthuse them to say, right, well, we could do this in Scotland, we could do this in St Andrews or Perth or Dundee or Angus. And if it doesn't fit into any of those venues, then yes, maybe it'll only fit in Glasgow or Aberdeen. That's ultimately how it should all work as well. But it's trying to get the ambassador notion that, so we don't scare them into thinking we're asking them to organise a conference. That's one of the main thrusts of Pathfinders and also ambassador programs. We just need them to be a figurehead, and we need people from Scottish Enterprise and all the business leaders in Scotland who go to these annual things in Brussels or Barcelona or whatever to say, could we host this in Scotland? And frankly, in many cases, could we host this better than what we had? Would the food be better? Would the venue be better? Would the networks be better? It's marrying that, and then it's showing them that it's actually low-hanging fruit. They don't need to do all the running. We can work out all the logistics. That's so easy for experts like Karen and the members of the Convention Bureau. It's similar to how do hotels and venues cope with servicing people during the pandemic. Well, that's a day job. We know how to do that. So it's really allowing business people and ambassadors and academics to have the confidence that we have a world-class offering here, and it's getting them to help make the case for why they want to bring 200 of their peers to your region. It's showcasing them, but it's showcasing their region, and it's completely win-win. And the final thing I would say is as well, we're not talking about millions and millions of pounds per event. We're talking tens of thousands, and at the top, maybe talking 500,000, $1 million. For the right conference, that money can be found, and it can be found from the relevant beneficiary sector or the beneficiary directorate in the Scottish Government, not the tourism sector.
Yeah, I think the Business Events Development Group that we set up a couple of years ago in Dundee is now taking on a regional approach, and it's incorporating the University of St Andrews, for example, and Perth College in a wider sphere, because we recognise that those academics are within those organisations, and that geographical boundaries aren't relevant, neither to the visitor nor to the academic. Should we combine resource, do you think, on a regional basis?
Definitely. I think on a regional basis, combine resource. I think our sector, the international clients, they don't book, they don't typically book regionally. Now that may sound strange to the audience I'm saying this to, but certain destinations, it is quite a focused area that they are coming to. And I think bringing them to Scotland and then working out where they go once they get here is the key thing. Gleneagles, for example, is in Perthshire, but I've always said I don't believe that an American group in Gleneagles knows or cares that when they go for their gala dinner in Stirling Castle, they're no longer in Perthshire. It's quite a blurred thing. So I think within Dundee, Angus, Fife and Perth, you have, by sheer chance, 4 of the most recognisable regions or counties, as they call them down south. I mean, these are world famous. Everyone knows these names, but only take it so far. But I think working together is also the key to coming out of this pandemic, whether it's with the Convention Bureau or as these 4 world famous regions with some absolutely out of the ballpark world class facilities in terms of some what exists in the hotels and the academic venues or the academic centres of excellence. Working together is what will help us work, whether it's joining with PCMA or site. I was on the site AGM yesterday, which is focusing on incentives. The whole of St Andrews is an incentive playground. Angus is an incentive playground. Perthshire is all there. So we're not starting from anew. And I think joining together is a very, very strong way to do that. And just related to that, and in conversations with the Scottish Government, the whole hospitality label, one of the nightmares that UK government and I think governments around the world has had over the last year is the hospitality sector is so massive, nobody can put their arms around it. It's everything from a greasy spoon to, as Angela Hartnett said, 3 Michelin-starred restaurant, including everything between corporate hospitality, events, and everything else. And what Scottish Government were fascinated when I told them that the sector in Scotland, business events, in terms of who's bringing them into Scotland and who is pivotal to what we're doing, sorry, moving out of the screen here, is actually not that many. It's possibly 40 or 50 businesses in the whole of Scotland in terms of inbound. So it's not 50, 60, 70,000 hotels and bed and breakfasts, which are the numbers that government centrally are having to cope with. It's not 70,000 wedding venues. It's right. These are the key people. Dundee Convention Bureau, Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau, which is also Fife, Perthshire and Angus. Glasgow, the P&J in Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Gleneagles, Fairmont, and you want some world-class academic centres of excellence. Okay, James Sutton Institute, University of St Andrews, University of Dundee. We have it all, and it was a real. I could see a real light going on in the Scottish Government that right, so it is only 40 or 50 people or organisations. We can do something with this. So I'm rapidly trying to pull together a paper that articulates who those 50 are. And I think that's a massive open door.
Neil, thank you. My final question is about the competitiveness of the future business events marketplace. There are a lot of cities in the UK who will see as part of their economic future business events linked with their academic institutions, linked with their business sectors. What is it that local authorities and convention bureaus need to do in terms of responding in that competitive marketplace?
I think whilst a lot of destinations in UK and around the world, they'll have a version of what we call the policy-driven model. In a lot of cases, they're sort of fiddling around at the sector level, whereas we've taken it higher up the cliff face and tapped our thing into the wall at the policy level, which is much bigger and much more serious. That sounds silly. Sectors are serious, but sectors are lower down. We're going right at the top. I think the key thing for local authorities, and this is for massive tourism cities all around the world, including Las Vegas, has exactly the same conversations. I think we saw it in Edinburgh in the last year or so. It's local authorities absolutely understanding the opportunity here that a business event coming to your city or region is actually a shop window, and it's not just a bunch of tourists. It's not a leisure group. It's not part of the Airbnb problem. It's taking to many aspirations of the city in one fell swoop, and it's a sort of no-brainer that a local authority should want to embrace these and sit down with the Convention Bureau and sit down with local academics and business people and say, right, you tell us what you'd like to see coming to Dundee or St Andrews or Perth or Angus. You just tell us. Say, well, I go to a pensions conference every year in Cannes, and that's a true story. There is a pensions conference every year that goes to Cannes in every November, and guess what? The delegates seem to quite like going to Cannes every November. So we can't uproot everything. And then other big congresses are owned by the Messe in Germany, whether it's Dusseldorf and stuff. But most of them, most of these are peripatetic events. So they're looking for a new destination. And I think we need to get the local authorities and national government and really the main stakeholders engaged and enthused, because it makes them look good as well. It's them hosting without having to worry about logistics and how it will work or picking menus and stuff like that. It's a win-win. And I think any convention bureau of the future that's purely just hotels and venues, it's really just, you don't have the right people around the table, and it needs to be academics and ultimately some business people, but it has to be the right people. But I think that's how to do it. Just embrace it and help the business events community lobby the right people to say this isn't just tourism.
Neil, thank you. I'm really pleased that there are many synergies with our local thinking in terms of the Convention Bureau and the Business Events Development Group in terms of what we're working towards, and also the thinking that you've just described in Visit Scotland. So thank you very much for today. I hope you're able to stay around for our Q&A later on when we have the panel and have some questions from our audience. So thank you again from me, Neil. Thank you. Continuing now on recovery planning, let me now bring in Karen Tocker, the Business Events Manager at Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau. Karen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mike, for the introduction. And of course, we're delighted to bring this conference to our partners today. The effects of the pandemic on the meetings industry has been felt across the region and of course replicated around the world, with conferences cancelling and postponing their events, and not forgetting really the financial loss that has been experienced by organisers and the industry who have been actually tasked with supporting the delivery of these events. The pandemic has actually also accelerated transformation in business events and has also challenged the Convention Bureau and destinations around the world to adapt to a new normal in a very, very short space of time. Collaboration in the task ahead to restart economies devastated by the impact of the pandemic is needed now more than ever. So there is a strong opportunity to build on the strength in our partnerships across the regions and to support collaboration and innovation. We have some of the best research centres in the world and innovative companies who are leading across a number of sectors in the region, and face-to-face meetings really does play a necessary and vital role in sparking an innovation and collaboration, creating a reason for local and world-leading experts to get together to innovate and to solve shared challenges. This is then supported by the Pathfinders programme, which has been designed to encourage and support the great minds across our leading research and academic institutes who are to really be a part of a new movement, forging new links, driving new pathways, and nurturing that future for academic and social and economic success. And this is all being showcased by actually hosting national and international meetings. This is then supported by the Pathfinders programme, which has been designed to encourage and support the great minds from our leading research and academic institutes across the region to really be part of a new movement, forging new links, driving new pathways, and really nurturing the future for academic and social economic success. And this is all being showcased by hosting national and international meetings. Our vision remains the same: to deliver the region of Dundee, Angus, Fife and Perthshire in Scotland as a leading destination for professional and inspiring business events that's really facilitating and supporting essential exchanges, which are integral to not only economic advancement but societal development as a whole. Our mission is to achieve this by maximising the cooperation among all of our stakeholders to win more and larger professional business events and achieve excellent outcomes for the organisers, for our partners and for the region. But our meetings industry members across the region are involved in every aspect of business events, from venue and accommodation providers right through to our service providers. And together we provide conference organisers with the best resources in our destination. In turn, this will support our members to both benefit from and contribute to the increase in the region's profile as a business events destination. Our plan for recovery will involve navigating the challenges, so for organisers and those supporting the meetings industry. Planning is underway to host postponed and new meetings for 2021 and beyond, and there is a need to provide short to medium term solutions such as virtual hybrid meetings, as you're experiencing today at this conference, so to support associations and organisations to continue with the vital research and collaboration. Digital is really just seen as another channel. It's another tool for organisers to reach new audiences, to engage in vital exchanges and to make their events a lot more accessible. Also led by guidance, we are looking to place health and safety at the centre of all planning with the introduction of duty of care plans that will really highlight the responsibilities of all parties, the destination, the organisers and delegates themselves in keeping everyone safe and healthy. The region is well placed to collaborate and support solutions to navigate through these challenges. Business Events works to rebuild an economy long term, and we will continue to work in collaboration with all partners and stakeholders to support and develop both why and how we host national and international meetings, developing a bid pipeline of professional association conferences, but aligning these to our regional, national, and also the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and progressing any calls to bid for a conference through into secured events. And we also aim to develop signature homegrown global events. The team continue to build on the strong support structure in place for bids, and the support required to host national and international meetings. This is all achieved through the experience of the Convention Bureau team, but also our network of professional meetings industry partners across the region. Our focus will also very much be on developing the destination's legacy outcome. As you will have already heard from Leslie and Alex, the importance of incorporating legacy initiatives into future events and the opportunity really to evaluate and advocate the beyond tourism value of meetings. There is also a need, however, to develop educational pathways specifically designed for business events. And this has all been amplified due to the directional change in business events. So we are looking to resume the development of a young professional development program, which was actually underway prior to the pandemic. And the Convention Bureau, along with our Business and Events Development Group, are looking to continue discussions that we started with Dundee and Angus College, our universities, and also joined by ICA, the International Congress and Convention Association, to actually co-design and support college and degree programs in business events to ensure that we can upskill our young people and provide career and job opportunities that will better serve the industry in the future. So this is really our vision for going forward, and inviting everyone to join us along the journey.
Karen, thank you for those thoughts. The pandemic, with all its consequences, has amplified the need for radical change in the meetings industry. It's questioned the very reasons we meet at conventions. What are your views?
Yes, Mike, I think in particular around association meetings, they are placing the importance of why they should meet and how a destination can actually help them reach their objectives, as you've probably heard from Greg Talley and Neil and the others, and actually connect with the research and business excellence in the host destination, which is very, at the very top of their list when selecting their host destination. So this has become even more important since the pandemic to justify the travel, the potential health risks, cost, and time, along with their climate footprint of actually meeting in person. So I think destinations really need to think beyond the economic turnover derived from heads on beds and proactively link the conference or the Congress objectives with the intellectual capital and business acumen of the actual city, the region, and also the country in which it's actually held.
Karen, what is the Dundee, Angus, Fife and Perthshire and the Convention Bureau's role in business events recovery via virtual channel?
Well, Mike, I think virtual is a channel that can be utilised to provide a short to medium term solution to support that continuation of vital research and collaboration. Virtual is very likely to remain, as you will have heard from the other speakers, as a channel really to be used to support that hybrid and blended conference and meetings scenario, and really used by meeting organisers to, when face-to-face meetings return, as a tool to create more accessible events, to allow them to reach new audiences that for whatever reason, such as cost, childcare or health reasons, would not really have been able to attend previously. And it really allows the professional associations to grow their membership, which in turn then supports that professional development, that collaboration, and also to establish new networks and advanced research and innovation, with that ability to increase face-to-face meetings and attendance at future meetings.
Thank you. And how can the business events community support the Convention Bureau in planning for recovery?
There's really a need to address, I think, two key areas: to provide a safe and healthy environment for all attending and organising business events, and have that capability really as a destination to support new meetings channels in a virtual hybrid event. So we're really asking our members, member communities, to be ready with safety guidelines, visual plans, virtual site visits and tours, and also digital solutions to support the new landscape and direction of business events. And I think addressing these will really support our Pathfinder community, who play a vital role in restarting these economies that have been devastated by the impacts of COVID-19. Business events provides that tool and that platform that will help to advance a broad-based recovery in the most effective way.
Karen, thank you for that. Thank you for the positive thoughts and the clear energy that you bring. Thank you very much to your team for everything that you do. This ends the part of our conference on the prospects for market recovery, this session, and we will now move into a short 5-minute break before we come back and look at the virtual and digital session. Enjoy your cup of tea. See you in a few moments. In introducing our final stage section this afternoon on virtual and hybrid, our Dundee and Angus Convention Bureau have been working on a best practice guide with the help of DLR Media on considerations for virtual and hybrid meetings. This will actually be sent out to all of today's delegates at the conference post-conference, as will a link for the Meet Safe section on the website, which gives a lot of information on how meetings can be conducted in a safe way. We'll soon be joined by Ian Johnston, Director of Operations at Johnson Media, who has provided the conference platform for today's event, and also by Daniel Rosie, Managing Director of DLR Media, who has supported the conference with design of our conference brand identity and supporting materials. We're very grateful for both for their generous support today. First, we're going to be joined by Chris Lawson, Chief Operating Officer of Cameron Events, who is going to give us an insight into the attendee experience and how to avoid screen fatigue and avoiding passive watching.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Lawson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Cameron Events, and today I'm going to talk to you about the attendee experience and how to avoid screen fatigue and avoid passive watching at your events. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to distill this down into 3 distinct areas, and those are event design, the event platform, and your event budget. It's worth noting at this stage though that most of what I'm going to talk about today doesn't involve any additional budget. However, I've added in event budget because it is a crucial thing in choosing the correct platform and the provider. So I want to talk about event design, I'm really talking about specifically with regards to your design of the program, because this is, you know, one of the most important elements you can do, and it's free. It just requires, you know, the heavy lifting of using your brain to really produce a program that, you know, interests people from the get-go. You know, you really want to, you know, create an event that people want to attend in the first place. I suppose that's the main thing. But you want to, you know, create space in the agenda for lots of breaks as well. You know, that's super important. And you want to allow for audience engagement. You know, you really, you know, Q&A, polling, you know, you really want to be a two-way experience. You also want to allow for the, you know, user-generated sessions. You know, let the delegates be involved in the, you know, the program. Allow them to really add to the event in that way. You can, you know, design your event to have concurrent sessions so that the delegate chooses the sessions that they want to attend, and then the other sessions that they miss, they can catch up on demand. You want to allow for different types of presentation as well. You know, long form, when I say long form, I mean max 20 minutes, short form, you know, being 5 to 10 minutes long, mixed video content with slide content, with panel discussions. You know, really, you know, change it up how you're presenting your content and your information. And you know, use story to tell your presentation rather than, you know, just death by PowerPoint. You know, really go down the sort of TED Talks route and build, you know, a program that's full of stories. You can also utilize different slide techniques like Pedagogy, which is, you know, 20 minutes rapid fire slide content. Other things you can do within the program are, you know, build in hooks, you know, build in a surprise, you know, a surprise announcement. You know, it could be the end of a session, or, you know, create surprises within the program, and it could be as something as, you know, a surprise ending to a presentation, but you want to include intrigue into that. You can also build in gamification into your event as well. You know, that's been very popular over the last few years. You know, it really does add to the event. It requires a lot of thought to begin with, but actually, you know, it does allow for, you know, people to use their minds, you know, through the program. Now the next few things that I want to talk about are specific to the platform that you choose, but they're also crucial within the program. And those are, you know, allowing for breakout spaces, you know, allowing for round tables to happen where people can, you know, go and have a group discussion. You know, set people a challenge. You know, give them a problem to solve. You know, people are at their best when they're solving problems, and having breakout spaces really does, you know, allow for that. You know, there's also, depending on the platform you choose as well, interactive whiteboards. You know, the things that actually link not just the organisers and the delegates, but the presenters as well. You know, again, get them working on a solution to a problem. The other thing you can do as well is obviously have networking. You know, have virtual networking. It's clearly not the same as face to face, but you know, I think what we've seen over the last sort of year is that it actually works. It's my idea of hell, but it actually, you know, really works. And at this point, you know, we go from the sort of program into basically the event platform. Now, I'll warn you now, this next slide is super busy and super scary, but you know, these are just some of the event platforms out there, the virtual event and hybrid event platforms out there. I think I've counted about 150, and I think I've demoed probably, you know, somewhere around 50 or 60. So, you know, really, if anybody wants to talk to me about these, I'll bore you to death. But it's super important to choose the correct platform, and you're going to want to pick a platform based on your event design. You're going to want to pick a platform based on your objectives, and obviously your budget as well. But you know, for me, the core things that you need to choose when you're, you know, choosing a platform, you know, is having, you know, something that mimics the real thing. You know, have a main room, you know, have breakout spaces, have networking, have expo areas. You know, these are all, for me, you know, that's what makes an event. You know, so. It really is important to choose the right platform, but again, your event design needs to be correct in the first place. And as we move out of the sort of fully virtual area into the sort of hybrid area, you're going to want to provide pick a platform or a technology partner that has an app that works with that platform, because the last thing you want is for half your audience to have some sort of engagement and interaction and the other half don't. You really want the remote audience to interact with the local audience. So that's going to be crucial as we move out of this phase into hybrid. And clearly that the platform is going to have an impact on your budget, but for me, I see that the platforms as a necessity. So I've not really included them in the sort of event budget part of this 5-minute presentation. But your event budget, there's, as I said, most of what I've discussed here before has been free. Your event platform is probably it's one of the considerations, but everything I've sort of included within this section really is if you had additional budget. If you had the budget to add on to your event, that you could choose different things to really sort of prevent that fatigue. And they are, and I'll come back to, hiring a good speaker coach, someone that's going to take those presenters' presentations and turn them into a story that really engages the audience. Source inspirational guest speakers, those are really good as well. They come with a hefty cost though, but that, I think we tried to get Joe Wicks for an event. Man, he's expensive. Maybe not inspirational, but certainly to do the old exercise stuff, which I'm going to go into here as well. But creating sort of breakout yoga classes or breakout exercise classes in the morning to kind of energize people, those things sort of work. Having mindfulness workshops as well. Just a quiet place for people to go and just reflect and re-energize. Those are also important, and those can be guided as well, or they could be just a sort of hosted session on demand. And we've done other stuff as well, like just have creative breakout spaces where people just go in and they draw and do art. I think that to summarize, I suppose, everything that I've kind of gone through, I mean, because it's virtual, you can't move them physically. You can't move the delegates physically like you would at a face-to-face event, but you definitely can move them mentally. You can move them through different parts of their brain through utilizing different techniques. And I think that's the most important sort of takeaway I think I would leave you with, is that this doesn't just apply to virtual. It doesn't apply just to hybrid. This applies to face-to-face, and this is stuff that you should be thinking about anyway. Death by PowerPoint. I've been in this industry for so long, and it destroys my soul when we have the knowledge to really provide engaging, inspirational events, whether that be virtual, whether that be hybrid, or whether that be full face-to-face. So really, that's it for me. That's my top tips for solving the fatigue problem, and as I said, they also solve the face-to-face problem as well. So thank you for listening to me. I will be available in the booth for Q&A, and hope to hopefully see you in there. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me along today. My name is Daniel Rosie. I'm the Managing Director of DLR Media. DLR Media are a marketing and communications agency. We're based here in Dundee, and we work with clients throughout Scotland and further afield. We have a specialist production team in-house at DLR Media who work with a range of local and national clients, mainly working with events and sports clients on promotional video and event production. So I've been asked today to come along and chat a bit more about the need for how a production budget can be totally different from an events and conference budget, and what to look at when you're planning your conference or event going forward. As we know, virtual is kind of here to stay, and it's definitely, we can see the kind of change in the consumer mindset for that. How much of that will stay continually going forward, but we'll start to see. But I definitely think there's lots of opportunities for everyone as conference organisers and venues to look at. I'm going to kind of cover some of them today and have a look at some of the differences when planning your event. One thing I'd always like to say is there's lots of opportunities with having a virtual or digital event, opportunities that it presents. So don't always look at the negatives, we'll hopefully touch on some of the positives too, and the difference between a hybrid and a virtual event of whatever you may choose. So one thing we're going to kind of look at is with a virtual event and looking at the cost differences is, yes, your costs may decrease because you might, if it's a fully virtual event, you might not have the costs of venue, of lunches, of catering, of name badges. However, your costs may increase on a different budget, and that may be your production, your live streaming, your event staff, may that be virtually. Or if you're doing a hybrid event, you might have costs for both. So you may be streaming half your event online and still having half the costs in-house. Some costs may reduce and some costs may increase, but hopefully it should balance out nicely. And working with partners like ourselves hopefully should help out, and we can give you an idea of costs for going forward. You should also look at some of the cost opportunities, and some of that includes opportunities that digital presents, and that might be in terms of digital sponsorship, commercial opportunities, ticket sales, and things, for example, entering new countries, accessing new speakers, accessing new locations, which you potentially may have not been able to access before due to travel costs and delegate costs too, which are associated with these. So the first thing I always start with is it going to be a hybrid or a virtual event? And the difference between two. And in the hybrid, we want to work very closely with the event organisers, the venues, local venues throughout the area, and make sure it's solid. However, it's got to be a joined up approach, and there's a bit of education on all parties of how we pull that together. You also want to look at your digital assets and your advertising of your event. A traditional event, in-person event, may be totally different, differently advertised to how you would advertise a digital event. And one thing with it being hybrid or virtual is that your advertising and your online marketing is going to be even more crucial to that, as that's maybe all they see about the event. And another key point is your event partners and who you're going to partner with, because your event partners be different, and they've got to collaborate very well to be able to pull off the event successfully. So the part I'm going to focus now on is the event partners, and we always say you kind of need 3 main partners for this, and kind of look at some of the must-haves, the should-haves, and the could-haves for your event, and what to think about when costing for it. The main part, the first part is production. Production is we class as your film production, what potentially you would have had a videographer, a photographer at your event before. So this is the company that's going to come in and look at filming your event, looking at your audio for your event, editing and graphics on this of presentations, and potentially your studio setup and your lighting. Your second part is your stream and your hosting, which is looking at your live stream, your platform hosting, your live editing that there during then, making it look high quality and kind of turning that into a full live presentation aspect of things. And also your streaming and internet management. The third aspect we split it up and then into is the platform and tech support. So what platform are you going to be using? How are people going to access that? How are people going to book the tickets? And then also, who is the tech team and support team that are going to support your guests throughout the event? So that might be your guests and your speakers, whereas before you would have members of staff on the ground, but you're now going to have them virtually and make sure that people can access, get round, come and go throughout your event throughout the day. So we always look at the 3 areas, and that's production, that's filming, audio and lighting. Your second part, which is actually taking that production and putting it online. How do we get it from point A to point B? How we make that look great in between, and make sure that the internet and the stream is solid. Then the third part is what's the end goal? Where are we going to put it from? So we've got your in-house event, we've got your stream, and then we've got your end goal, which would be your platform. And where is that platform? How are people going to access it, and how can you support them on that? All 3 parts could be helped and assisted what we would call production management company. So we'd always, or a production manager. So what we'd class this as, the way I'd look at it is you'd normally have an event manager, you'd have a production manager. And you could have both these and they work very closely together. Your production manager is going to help you assist with all 3 elements, and you might have a range of partners and suppliers, but hopefully this person organises and pulls it together to one. So focusing on, as I suggested, three kind of areas, which is must-haves, should-haves, and could-haves. So a must-have for a virtual or a hybrid event is a production management company or somebody dealing with the production elements of things, pulling that together and making sure as that event's going on day to day, the schedule's followed, the internet's good, the connection's working, guests can access accordingly. There's a good internet connection if you're having a hybrid event. Is the internet connection good? Can we get a separate connection from potentially the hotel's guest Wi-Fi, staff Wi-Fi, to make sure there's no downtime throughout the event? That you've got streaming, hardware that what we've brought in, either it's brought in or it's external, everything's solid. You have audio microphones and you have good lighting. So that aspect of production is a good solid piece and can be done in-house. I should have is appropriate space. This is more for the venues. Appropriate space, especially during COVID restrictions and potential restrictions going forward. We need to make sure you may only have 20 delegates, but you may need to have 3 studios set up, depending on live things that are going on at once. You'll need to have room plans and set up requirements. So for a production management company, we need to see exactly how your room's going to be set out, what requirements are required at each time, and also, does your production company have a portable setup? How long are they going to be in that room? How long does it take to get set up? How long does it take to come down? It's very much, if you're looking at an AV supplier, can the production company do the AV, or are they going to have to join into the AV company too? A simple thing is, if you've got a speaker on a stage, are they going to have 2 microphones, one going to your live stream and one going to the audio in the room? Or can your production company work with your AV company to plug in at the same audio source so everybody gets the same audio? Simple things like that is where the collaboration between partners is really important. Could-haves could be custom backgrounds for your speakers, flexibility to use studio at conferences. If you are a venue, are you thinking about investing in some hardware that stays there all the time? That you could work with long-term partners. And then also, could-haves could also be commercial and then sponsorship opportunities. There's a lot of new opportunities online to reach new speakers, sponsors and delegates online. So who's going to do the business development for that? How are you going to market the event and go to market with it? And as I said at the start of my presentation, virtual and hybrid events have a lot of opportunities and a lot of positives to them. So it's worthwhile speaking with a range of contacts locally and finding out how can you make sure your event reaches a wider audience and potentially reach new heights. So if you've got any questions or looking for any quotes or advice on how to budget for your event, worthwhile getting in touch with the ladies at the Convention Bureau, or feel free to come past myself or any of the other partners at the exhibition booths today, and we're more than happy to answer your questions. Thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, my name is Ian Johnson and I'm the owner of Johnson Media and Global Events 24/7. I've been asked today to give a talk on virtual platforms and what you as an event organiser might look for your event. So, as a supplier, we offer our customers a choice of 3 different platforms. What we do is we get a brief from a customer, we have a look at what they want, and then we'll have a look at what platform is going to be best for their event. Now today we're using a platform called Floor. Hopefully you've enjoyed the experience of Floor and you've been able to register, you've been able to go to the networking lounge, you've been able to watch the sessions, and later on today hopefully we'll see you in the booths. And that experience has been seamless and quite straightforward for you. We're now going to have a look at the stage area and branding. Branding's important in a virtual event. It's a place where sponsors can have their name or a logo. So the stage area is the area where you'll spend most of your time. So getting branding on the stage area is an absolute must for your event partners or your sponsors. The networking lounge is also an important place and plays a big role in your virtual event. It's the place where people meet, they exchange ideas, they make appointments, and not only that, it's the place where they actually do business. So it is a key feature, so don't forget about your networking lounge, and don't forget to give your delegates and your exhibitors time to spend in these areas. Exhibitors' booths are also another key feature of virtual events. And we're going to have a quick look here at what you can get out of a booth. So in this booth, we've got a welcome video. Now that could be a promo video, or it might even be a video that says, sorry, we're not here today, but please contact us, and hopefully we'll see you soon. It'll have a call to action where you'll leave your email address. It will have private booths or tables where you can have conversations with your suppliers. It's got your social media icons, and these will then take you to places like the company website. The next big thing in my eyes is integrating 3D into your event. Now we're working on poster sessions and how we can bring these poster sessions to life. This is aimed at universities, where you click on a poster and that poster will pop out. You'll be able to read it. It might even have a voiceover, or it could even be a video. Now, the James Hutton Institute are kind of one step ahead, because what they've got is they have a virtual 3D event coming up where you will be able to click on little icons and you'll be able to see information about that particular area. This is a wood on the outside of Dundee. These are little what we call hooks, and the hooks will allow you to explore different parts. This is a hook that takes you to some drone footage, and that drone footage will explain, a little bit more about that particular area. And finally, collecting data. Definitely something that you want to make sure is available on the platform that you choose, because the data will help you organise your next event. It will help you give information to your sponsors. You can basically track a person from the time they sign up to the time they leave. You can tell where that person's been, how long they've been in a session, how long they've been in the coffee shop, what visitors, what booths did they visit, what stuff did they take away, what did they download, what videos did they watch. It's all in the data. So collecting powerful data should definitely not be overlooked. That's my 5 minutes up. So if you're interested in having an event or hosting an event, then I'll be in my booth after the conference finishes. And I thank you very much for listening to my talk.
Thank you, Chris, Daniel and Ian, and also to Daniel and Ian for their support in helping put today's virtual conference together. It's been great having you on the team. Our final speaker this afternoon is Councillor John Alexander, leader of Dundee City Council, who's going to talk about the aspiring ambition for our region. John, welcome.
Thanks very much, Mike. And first of all, can I congratulate you and the team on what has been a fantastic event over the course of this afternoon. I hope that everybody has got something from it. And certainly the calibre of contribution so far has been really impressive, and I think goes to show the fantastic depth and wealth of expertise and talent that we've got across the whole of the Tayside region. I really wanted to just take a few moments to touch upon, I suppose, the ambition and that aspiration that we have for the future across Dundee and Angus. And I think one of the topics throughout the course of today, and of course the reason that we're having a virtual event, is because of the impact of COVID-19. Now, whilst there is a glimmer of sunshine at the end of that tunnel, there is still much work to do to get back to some degree of normality, and I'm very conscious upon the impact on businesses and particularly business events. I think there's a clear appetite, a clear interest from business and from wider afield to be able to go forward and host events like this in a physical form. I'm really looking forward to being able to participate in events where I have to wear a suit and tie and perhaps not look so relaxed. But of course, some of those events have changed in their nature and perhaps the way in which they are delivered as well. And I think that is actually an opportunity for our region. As a smaller locality, a small city like Dundee and the neighbouring hinterland, I think the aftermath of COVID-19 will make Dundee and those smaller destinations far more attractive to the types of events that may well come forward in the coming months and years as well. And I think it will be a huge opportunity for us. And I think the other thing as well is, you know, the events of today have shown that talent that exists and also the appetite that exists within the region to attract international and national events and continue to collaborate and connect with others. The world's never felt so small, and I think digital technology and the way we've used that over the last year has been a big part of that. And again, that will be a big feature of future conferences, future business events, I'm sure and I'm certain. Dundee and Angus have undergone significant transformation over recent years. That is set to continue. That aspiration, that momentum, that drive, that determination is there just as it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. But also the reputation and the appeal of our region as a centre of excellence, as an academic epicentre, as a place where people want to come to partake in these types of events or other activities, that is also set to continue. So I am positive about the future because I absolutely believe that we have all of the ingredients to deliver a fantastic opportunity for business and for organisations alike. We will always aspire for more. We will always aspire for better. And I think the bold and ambitious agenda that we've set out on over the last couple of years is and has already delivered some fruit. The work that has been undertaken more recently to deliver things like the Tay City deal, the work that we are continuing on fantastic opportunities like the Eden project, are real assets for the entire region and will continue to attract envious eyes, not only nationally, but from across the globe. But it's also the work in the University of Dundee, of the University of St Andrews, Aberdeen, further afield, that will help us continue to drive forward with that innovation and attract the types of events that we think we can host to great effect. So I think everybody involved so far should be really proud of what's been delivered. And whilst COVID-19 has put all of our plans on ice, they will certainly begin to thaw over the coming months. And I think we've got a really positive future and a positive way forward for Dundee and Angus to reap the rewards from all of that hard work and, as I say, that bold and ambitious agenda. So I hope everybody has enjoyed today's events. I hope you've all got something from it, but I also hope to see you in person at some point in the near future as we continue to drive forward with those plans to host a series of different events for different sectors and play on our fantastic strengths. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
John, thank you very much for that, and thank you for helping us to end today's conference with some inspiration and on a point of real positivity, I think. We very much look forward to seeing you at our future Pathfinders events, and we thank you greatly for your support for the programme. Thank you. Now, I'd like to take just a moment before we move into our final section for the Q&A session today with our panel of speakers to tell you that the Convention Bureau will be sharing the recording of this live event today, as well as a link to the Meet Safe page on their website to help you with planning for a safe and healthy event. The website also includes a virtual and hybrid best practice guide delivered in partnership with DLR Media, Cameron and Johnson Media. And finally, we would very much welcome your feedback for today's conference, as it allows us to plan and improve on any future event. If you could take a few moments to complete the evaluation survey, we would be very grateful. All of the above will come out to you early next week in a post-event email from the Bureau. Moving now to our final session for today, let's now meet again our speakers panel for our Q&A session.